Hello, everyone. We'll sit down in a second. I'm kind of impressed. You voluntarily came to a topic about IT. In, I think, the farthest room you had to walk to. So I'm assuming that if you're here, you really want to be here. I'm Jenna Cline. I'm going to moderate a session. I'm going to introduce my team, and we're going to go through a few questions we have, but we want this to be interactive. We're going to have a few questions for you all as well, all right? Thank you for joining. Okay. First, this is a session about managing a modern IT organization. And the way that we run Atlassian IT, we like to think of as modern because we have a few different philosophies that we bake into our decisions. And we've talked to a number of customers over the last year about this concept of modern IT, and there's three that really resonate with a lot of customers, and we're going to get into those today. But first, let me introduce the panel, because I do have experts on here that are going to help us navigate some of these big topics, okay? First, we have Mo, who is our head of intelligent automations, which includes automation as well as integrations, and he runs a IT innovation team. And automation for us, as it is probably for a lot of you as well, has been an important investment for us. Last year, we hit our big, hairy, audacious goal of automating out 100,000 hours of work in Atlassian with Mo's team. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in some future. But most of the work that we did was based on low-code and no-code platforms. So that's Mo. Next up is Sonny. He's our head of IT strategy and business operations. He looks after our investments, our hiring plans, and a lot of his current work is really around managing our ever-growing SaaS application. We're mostly a cloud-based IT team, and the management of that falls under Sonny and his super capable team. And then at the end here, we have Phil. And for anyone who's worked in IT for more than a few days, you know that just deploying technology does not make it successful. You need someone, you need to make sure that it's the tech, it's the people, it's the process. Phil was our first business architect that we hired at Atlassian IT to make sure we do just that. He sits in between the tech and the business, helping translate business goals into IT investments. All right? There we go. Well, let's get into it. I'm going to bring up, sorry, I think this is hidden. There it is. The three topics we thought we'd get into today. We have a lot of choice. There's a lot of different things we could talk about managing a modern IT organization. The three that we chose today are around managing IT versus shadow IT. The second is running IT like a product organization. And then the last is baking innovation into our DNA. Before I get into this, I'm going to ask quickly in the room by show of hands, how many of you are actually in IT? Okay, I wasn't expecting that. So almost everybody is here is in IT. That's actually great. We're going to have some nerdy IT jokes, so I just wanted to make sure you all got them. I also, because IT can really vary company to company, and the profile of the company can impact what IT looks like, I thought it'd be good if we just went over a few fun facts about our IT organization. The first, as I mentioned, cloud native. We mostly buy cloud. We don't have a cloud migration strategy for IT because we are cloud. We've been that way for a number of years. We have very few on-prem things, so we're managing a cloud portfolio. And in that portfolio, we have about 600 apps for the whole company, and we actively manage around 270 of those. So we do have a bit of shadow IT, and we're going to get into our thoughts on shadow IT. We are a global company, and we're a global IT team, so the way we manage IT is around hubs, or geographic hubs. We have a distributed workforce as a company. We hire anybody anywhere, but we consider IT as having three dominant hubs where we like to co-locate when we need to, or make sure we have staff, and that's in the US, India, and Australia. We are a product-based operating model. That means that everything that we deliver from IT is thought of as a product that we build or purchase or integrate or make available to our business, our corporate teams, as needed. It's a little different than I think some other operating models IT that I've worked with in the past, like service management models. So product operating model is a transformation we've been on and we're going to touch on that in a bit. We are a best-of-breed IT, so we buy best-of-breed. We don't single source on a platform. For example, we want to make sure that we have what works for our business, and we prioritize the experience and the collaboration of our teams with the tooling that we purchase. And then last, I think it's obvious, but we have the awesome opportunity of being an IT team in a software company that is growing, that is global, that is remote, and has an awesome culture and set of values that we really love. So that's where we're coming from. Let's get into our questions. Let's talk about modern IT, guys.
All right, yeah, do it.
Smile, it's a good topic, come on. The first one, I got a poll for the audience, another one for you. And this one is gonna be around shadow IT. So in general, how many of you think shadow IT is evil? You really try to clamp it down. You're trying to get rid of shadow IT. It's starting to overwhelm your company. Shadow IT on the more negative side, okay. And then how many of you think shadow IT is awesome? 3. And 1 works for me. Okay, so. We actually do have a little bit of a philosophy on shadow IT. We've touched on it on a couple of topics. If you went to the panel that I was on with my colleague Molly Hellerman, that was moderated by a Forrester analyst, Chris Kondo, we talked a little bit about shadow IT. We do embrace shadow IT, but that doesn't mean it's the wild, wild west of shadow IT. So let's talk about what we actually think about it. And I'm going to start with Phil. How do we define shadow IT?
Sure, so our definition really isn't all that uncommon. It's IT assets that aren't owned by IT, right? So real big brain stuff here. But when we look further into that, we kind of have a pretty simple classification mechanism we use. So to get the easy stuff out of the way first, there's a big chunk of tech at Atlassian that's owned by our product engineering teams. Now, these are technical, competent folks that are very, very clear in terms of how they want to manage those assets. We sort of let that go and let them do their thing with that set of tech. The other bucket, a little bit harder to nail down, is those apps that are owned by the business. And you may be thinking, like, why would you want to let the business run a piece of technology? There's a lot of these niche SaaS applications that are coming up. And when we see an app that doesn't necessarily need to integrate with a whole bunch of stuff, say you don't need SSO integration for some reason, or the business team has a center of gravity of skills around that app. They've got competent folks who know how to configure them. We'll generally let them do that within a set of guardrails. There's sort of a third class of shadow IT, this sort of new realm of shadows that's popping up that we're starting to get a handle on, looking at stuff like app plugins, browser extensions, things like that. A little bit harder to nail down. We've got a few different mechanisms that we use to keep an eye on those. But really our philosophy centers around visibility, making sure that we've got an awareness of all of those things that are out there. There's a couple different ways that we do that. First and foremost, we partner with a number of different teams across Atlassian, working with procurement, IT security, risk and compliance, and privacy, to make sure that anything new that comes through the door at least gets a look from all those teams, right? We don't want to invite new tech in that's not secure, some new tech that's not compliant with GDPR. So we make sure that those kind of non-negotiable, those boxes are checked before we let it through the doors. In addition, that affords IT a great opportunity to make sure that, beyond just sort of those non-functional requirements, we get a good look at making sure that functionally, from a sort of a business need, a business value perspective, that we're hitting the mark. So if we see somebody that comes through with a tool that maybe we already have a few of, we can start to direct them toward those tools to avoid further proliferating the ecosystem. One other thing to call out, if you missed the talk this morning, my colleagues over here, Pete and Leah, did a great talk about how we employ Sas Management as another discovery mechanism to make sure that whatever we already have, we can sort of pick out and find those apps and make sure we got a good handle on that. So, scanning our financial records, making sure anything that folks are paying for, we've got a record for, we can sniff that out, we can make sure that it's compliant, secure, and meeting the needs of our business.
Yeah. So if bringing it out of the shadow into the light. I used to have a boss who would say, sunlight's the best disinfectant, which is kind of harsh. All right, so Sonny, I think one of the reasons a lot of IT teams, and I know all of us have been on IT teams in the past, where shadow IT is really something to contain because it can be expensive, right? Aren't we worried about the cost? How do we manage that?
Yeah, we're fortunate from a strategy perspective. We really look at this from a bit of a different mindset. While we do absolutely observe and manage the spend across our portfolio of SaaS applications, Cost isn't necessarily the leading decision driver when it comes to purchasing SaaS applications. We lead with enabling the business with the needed capabilities while ensuring all security requirements are met. We do have a governance framework in place to help ensure that our applications are indeed providing the expected business value from both a capability and leverage perspective. If we find that the applications aren't meeting the business value expectations, then we will evaluate options to potentially rationalize or even retire the applications. To share a bit of an example, when we first went into a fully remote work environment as a result of the COVID shutdown, we wound up implementing multiple solutions to enable virtual whiteboarding capabilities. Now, all of the solutions, they provided similar capabilities, but we just had teams across the company that preferred one over the other. And during that somewhat difficult time, what we did not want to do was negatively impact experience or productivity for our workforce. So we went ahead and implemented all the solutions, and as part of the upcoming renewal, we will evaluate and assess whether they're all providing the expected business value, and if we find that one or more are not, then we'll assess and potentially retire some of those applications. So to bring it home, our strategy is to focus on business value versus cost when it comes to managing our SaaS portfolio.
So, Mo, it's one thing to say we have visibility and we are managing cost and other things, but is there actual goodness in shadow IT?
We should definitely embrace shadow IT. There's too many requests coming into IT from the business to be able to service everything. Industry analysts are telling us by 2025, 70% of all the technology created in the enterprise is going to be done by non-engineers. And maybe someday, we'll have AI writing code, but in the next short term, next few years, it's going to be business technologists that are not in IT creating that technology. So as IT, we need to enable that technology creation, but also provide security and compliance to minimize risk. Who used to be a Jira admin from like 10 years ago, 10 plus years ago? Okay, so you might know what I'm talking about. So back then, to get Jira set up, you had to download a zip file, unzip it, edit a bunch of config files, get the database running, get the web server running, and then you could start using Jira. We used to send people a t-shirt if they managed to get through that rite of passage, the Dragon Slayer t-shirt, if anyone remembers that from back then. Fast forward to today, you spend more time using Jira than setting it up because you just fire up a web browser and you're ready to go. So we want to take that analogy and apply it to all of the internal tooling that we create. And a recent example I can cite is based on the Foundation org. You may have seen them in the expo. They have a booth where you can make solar panels for developing countries. If you haven't seen it, you can spend 30 minutes volunteering with them. They coordinate a lot of our volunteering and charitable efforts like donations for the company. And they don't have any engineers. They don't have any part of IT that's dedicated to support them. And they had this program called Engage for Good, where they wanted nonprofits to offer volunteering opportunities for Atlassians that had particular skill sets, so coding, design, project management, etc. But we're talking about hundreds of nonprofits matching with thousands of employees at Atlassian globally. So manually doing that would have been thousands of hours of effort, but they managed to automate all of that by spinning up their own Jira Service Management instance, creating the form for the nonprofits to fill out and offer their opportunities, and using some no-code integration to match that with Atlassian skill sets and then notify them on the back end. And they did this with minimal help from IT. And if you want to read more about that particular example and others like that IT's helped enable shadow IT, you can go to the Connected CIO microsite. I think there'll be a QR code later to visit that site.
So shadow IT, we want the light, we want visibility. So it's get it out of the shadows, make it visible, make sure we're managing the cost as needed, but don't sacrifice the experience or the value. And then there can actually be goodness in some shadow IT in enabling our business to do what they need to do. I mean, I think I mentioned if you went to the talk this morning with Molly that one of the things that I've seen is that a lot of innovation happens outside traditional tech or big platform plays, right? Some business teams have a very niche problem that need to be solved, and they can find an app to do that. And so if we allow them with the guardrails that we need to bring that in quickly, to solve their problem. If it gets to be a prolific use or something that we can structure with a better agreement, we'll do that. But more importantly, our business teams are really able to pick up some of those small tasks that are waiting in line for IT to solve, and they can do that quickly. And at Atlassian, we are a software company, and we have a pretty tech-savvy workforce, but a lot of these low-code, no-code options that are becoming available are great opportunity to take on some shadow IT without, scaring people at the company by embracing it fully. You don't need to tell them that Atlassian told them to love shadow IT. Okay, shadow IT. Let's move on to, no, that one. Let's move on to, all right, another poll. How many of you have in your IT teams a role called product manager or product owner? Okay, a couple. Yeah, interesting. We have been on a journey for the last couple years, well, about 18 months, I guess, in Atlassian IT to move to a true product-based operating model. We've identified 50 products, I think we have right now, in our portfolio. We group those and we manage those at 11 group levels. And we've built a core team of roles for each product. So we know what products we have, what roles we need in those products, who staffs those, and we're moving into how to budget and invest those, how to measure that, et cetera. It's been a journey. We were a bit more of a mixed bag of service management and some other ad hoc styles. We were always deploying agilely, but we wanted to make sure that we were focusing, just like with our shadow IT philosophy, on making sure that we're delivering an awesome experience. And putting people in the role of a product manager helps build that mindset that that's what we're trying to achieve. So a question for Sonny. Sonny and I have actually been on a team. We were in more of an ITSM model, very strict ITSM model in a previous life. From your role in biz ops or business operations right now, since you've seen different models of running IT, what can you tell us that's different about running a product-based operating model?
Yeah, sure. So the differences are subtle, but very important for us. As Jenna mentioned, we started the journey of implementing the product-based IT operating model a little over a year ago. And one of the first decisions the IT leadership team had to make was whether we were going to go forward with a product or service-based model. Now, both models do carry forward similarities, such as organizing all aspects of IT around a common taxonomy and framework. But given that Atlassian is a craft-based company focused on building amazing products, we wanted to make sure as an IT organization that we led with a product mindset when working with and enabling teams around the company. So for us, the product mindset truly is the key differentiator between the service and product models.
Yeah, that mindset shift has really been a big one for us. Mo, when we were first kicking this off, I remember we were laying out the philosophy or guiding principles that we had for product operating model, and one of the ones that IT leadership had the strongest opinion about is they absolutely wanted to build out autonomous teams. As someone who's been in IT for a while, autonomous can sound scary. To say these teams can go and operate how they want to operate. What's Atlassian IT's perspective on building autonomous teams?
Yeah, so the autonomous teams, they can make decisions very quickly, adapt to change, and hence deliver value very quickly. But the product managers act like the glue between all these different autonomous teams. So each of the IT teams that own a product will have a product manager paired with an engineering manager, and sometimes also a triad with a designer if there's a user experience component. If I take the example of the automation platform, like we provide a platform for all teams to automate their own work, but there's still a need for a product manager to work out how teams want to use it, what features they want to see, start filling up that Jira backlog for the engineering manager to burn down. But that doesn't mean the product manager decides everything that engineering manager and the team is going to do, because the engineering team still needs to worry about a lot of the non-functional requirements, so analytics, monitoring, alerting, all the ops and incident management. And together, that partnership ensures that the automation platform is not only usable and provides a good user experience, but is also compliant, secure, scalable, performant, and reliable.
Which is all good, but it does sound expensive, Sonny. Mo is expensive in general, but like this philosophy also sounds expensive. How are we thinking about managing our budgets and our investments with this product operating model?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely going to require a mindset shift across the spectrum. As part of our journey of implementing the product-based IT operating model, one of the first things we're going to do is begin tracking our financial insights based on the product taxonomy. And we will also begin holding product managers accountable for the financial performance of their products. As a part of that, we will also begin prioritizing investments based on products versus projects. And within each product, we're going to categorize the spend into 4 categories. The first category is incubate, which are investments towards innovation type of initiatives. The second category is transform, which are investments towards the initial build and implementation of capabilities and platforms, usually within a single product area. The third category is scale, which are investments towards scaling those capabilities and platforms across multiple product areas so that we can leverage common capabilities across the entire stack. And the fourth category is BAU, or business as usual, which includes KTLO, keep the lights on type of work, which also includes addressing technical debt, as well as small features and enhancements type of work that aren't quite large enough to be grouped into initiatives or projects. And I mean, we're pretty confident, or at least I'm pretty confident, that this framework will help ensure both accountability and transparency of all of our investments across our portfolio of products.
Yeah, and each year with those 4 categories, we set some goals for our product managers to look at their investments. So a percentage of their portfolio should be going towards each, and we try to keep that business as usual, that KTLO work, lower. That gives the product managers, with that goal in mind, they can then make more investments in what they need to do to introduce new capabilities for their product. And we'll talk about that as an IT leadership team each year about what do we think the right mix is. Do we need to push more on one thing or another? That, of course, would change with business models, acquisitions that we make, investments, et cetera. But the framework is simple enough where it helps team understand how to think about where they should put their investments, and then we can roll that up across all our products at the IT leadership level and be able to see how we're making investments each quarter. So these investments that we're talking about and these autonomous teams we're running, Phil, that's on the IT side. What does this mean for how you and our other teams are working with our business? Does this change the way we engage with our business teams?
It's changed a little bit, but really in a positive way. It's kind of simplified our engagement model, right? We've got a consistent set of roles organized in a very consistent way across product groups and individual products. So it makes it much easier for our business ops teams, our business partners, and more day-to-day engagement to know exactly who's accountable for what, right? They've got their product manager, they've got that technical lead, so it's sort of streamlined that quite a bit, especially if you come from more of a mixed model, as Jenna had mentioned, where certain groups organized in certain ways. That consistency, that simplicity has paid dividends already. When you're talking about more transactional engagement, right? Somebody wants to log a feature request, or hey, my laptop broke. One of the other things that we did was unify a whole host of different Jira service desks that we'd been accumulating over the years, and big shout out to our workplace technology team. This was a bit of an effort, and what we found is by having that single front door for IT, it gives us a totally clear pane of glass into which business customers are coming to us for what. We can report very, very simply, given that we've got that common instrumentation across all of our IT teams. And now it's been in place for what, about a year or so?
Almost a year, yeah.
Yeah, and we've started to see quarter-over-quarter improvements in terms of resolution times coming down, improved CSAT from business customers who are getting that support, getting answers to those questions much more quickly. So we've seen a definite move of the needle there. And if I could be selfish for a minute, just talking as a business architect, where we generally get plugged into larger cross-functional problems that are going to require a whole host of different product teams. By having that kind of predictability across our IT model, it affords us a strong accelerant in terms of assembling the right groups of products to tackle whatever that business challenge might be. So definitely a big fan here.
Yeah, and the service desk one is interesting. When we were starting down this journey of product operating model, I just wanted to look at basic ticket data and health and things across IT about 2 years ago, and that's when I learned we had 17 service desks in IT, and we put the burden on the end user to go figure out which service desk they were supposed to go to get their ticket help. And then each service desk was using their own issue types, and we had 42 different issue types in IT. And we thought, well, we probably should clean that up, right? So we got 14, and we eliminated a few, and we got those 14 down to 1. And then as part of that, that service desk is a product itself, like that they should be thinking of these things. How do we make that experience better for the company, not just for a few people who might be managing tickets, for example. And one of the things we did is not only combine the service desks, but we gave a single entry for everyone in Atlassian to go get help from IT. Like, we'll take the burden of routing those and where they need to go. So they have one place to go. We have one portal that we're managing, and then product managers get all the information that they need on what requests and other things are coming in. That's been a big change for IT. Yeah, that was a journey.
Lots of happy business users.
Lots of happy business users. Lots of questions from IT people. Okay, let's move into the third tenet here, and that is innovation. That's a hot topic. Atlassian, of course, loves innovation. It's something that we fully embrace, even in IT. But that's not always the case, and I'd like to get a spectrum here of, if you believe your IT team at your company is paving the way for innovation at your company. Okay, some tentative hands. Well, like, okay, you thought of a few examples in your head. They were like, oh, that was kind of innovative. Yeah. This is a tough one. I mean, our people want to work on innovation, right? The innovation's the interesting work. They want to innovate. They generally work in tech because they really like tech, so they want to be in that space. But IT is busy. I get it. Like, there's more work than we have time or capacity for. It often takes an investment. So we've tried to navigate that ourselves at Atlassian IT to make sure that we're providing innovation opportunities and really trying to bake that into our DNA at IT. So I'll start with Mo, because you actually lead an IT innovation team. And I'm guessing this is where all the innovation happens, right? Right in your little team.
So I think we can all agree that innovation's a good thing, right? We're coming up with new ideas, inventing new ways of working. Employees are more satisfied because they get to work on things that they thought of. But the problem we all have is finding the time to do that innovation. And at Atlassian, there's a number of innovation programs, the most popular being Ship It, which is a quarterly hackathon that gives you 24 hours as a whole company to work with whoever else you want on whatever you want. And that new products ideas have come out of those hackathons, but it's only 4 times a year, once a quarter. And other teams run innovation weeks, which is a bit more, gives a bit more time to make something a meaty innovation at the end of it, but again, they usually run 4 times a year. But what we found in IT, the best way to get more innovation going is build it into your your team's operating rhythm. So just do innovation all the time. And how do we do that? First we have to encourage the teams to keep across all of the trends, the hype cycles, the disruptive tech for their particular domain. And my team tracks that on Confluence using a tech radar type format on a template. And as you're watching those trends, some ideas will come out on potential use cases within the company. We capture those ideas in regular ideation rituals, bi-weekly, and capture them on Trello. When it gets closer to prioritizing those ideas and you actually want to start evaluating technology or doing a proof of concept, that's when we start thinking about how do we get the capacity, the sprint capacity to actually do that work. And Sonny was talking before about how we carve up all the different buckets of budget. So if your current sprint capacity is 80% new project work and 20% business as usual, try doing 70% project work and carve out that 10% for innovation. And put it into your sprint backlog like any other work, but these innovation projects, the best ones show value quickly or they fail quickly. And failing is not a bad outcome for innovation project because there'll be some learnings there, like technology was not ready, maybe the company wasn't ready. So it's good to do a retrospective, harvest all of those learnings, what went well, what didn't go well, and park it off to the side, and maybe another team in the future will come and take it, that next iterative step, and get it closer to reality. And we used to have, like Jenna mentioned, I run an incubation team, innovation team. So that team used to spend all of their budget on incubation, but over the years, they started to work on bigger projects, so they're doing a bit more transformational work now. And all the other teams are now spending more of their budget on incubation.
Yeah. Yeah, and the failure, I think, is an important point. Like, it's not necessarily failure in that people failed. It's failure that, okay, maybe this innovation wasn't exactly what we needed to be, but the learning is super important. I think Bob and Scott talked about this at the keynote this morning. We don't want to rake anybody over the coals for failing. It was you tried, and we learned, and now let's try something again. Is a great way to look at it. However, it can smell expensive, Sonny. So again, what are we doing at the investment level in our portfolio to balance our innovation costs?
Yeah, I mean, when you hear about the breadth and scale of innovation, as Mo described, it can feel and sound a bit expensive. For us, we take a blended approach when it comes to investing in innovation. As I previously mentioned, we categorize our spend into 4 categories: incubate, transform, scale, and BAU. And Mo alluded to this too a bit as well. But one of the levers we use to invest in innovation is by reducing the amount of our investment and spend in BAU type of activities. Now, you might be wondering, well, it sounds easy to do that, but how can you actually do that? 2 ways that we've been able to more consistently do that within IT is 1, through the automation of work, and 2 is by scaling single capabilities or platforms across multiple product areas so that we can leverage those shared capabilities across. Outside of that, innovation is a big focus for us, so we will prioritize net new investment as needed to fund innovation. I think we have a really good example of this. Mo's automation program, as Mo said, it started out as a very small incubation program, and now it's gone all the way through that model, and now we're kind of at scale, even starting to carve out some BAU in some areas. Any learnings or insights, Mo, you'd like to share about that?
One thing, like from the outside in, it looks like that automation platform popped up overnight, but like when I go back and look at all the different tech evals and POCs we ran, there was probably 30 different iterations of failing before we got to the right mix of different products and solutions we needed to provide automation across the whole company.
Yeah, I remember when we had the conversation at our IT leadership, it was, hey, we should probably look at RPA. Okay, do we have any money? Yeah, we'll put some money, and who should we give it to? Well, we'll give it to Mo. And that was our investment that year for innovation, and it was for RPA at the time, and it took off. It really did, but we had to make that investment and make sure we told somebody your capacity is going towards experimenting with this tech. Okay, so we do a lot of innovation in IT, obviously, Phil, but we work with the business too. How are we making sure that we expand innovation, things that we're looking at, anything that IT thinks might be promising for the business? How are we expanding it across the company?
Absolutely, and it's both across our business partners as well as with our product organization as well. So starting with the business partners, we've got, as Mo mentioned, sort of this fail fast mentality. One of the new things that we've spun up in our Atlassian team, or Customer One, is something we affectionately call Sim City, which is a simulation of our IT environment. So think of it as, you've got, we'll just say, a playground to fail when you're talking about exploring new technologies, exploring new integrations, connecting different technologies. So just to give you an example, we use Workday as our HRIS, it's a small platform. Some people may have heard of it. And we'll just say our talent acquisition team is looking to upgrade, how we're doing our hiring. They want to explore a couple different hiring tools and really quickly understand those that actually are up to snuff and actually meet that sales pitch. Does it integrate well? Is the data exchanged in the appropriate ways? Is it a delightful user experience? So rather than going through a super lengthy RFP process and finally getting the right tool in house and then plugging it in and then figuring out you've got a couple things that aren't quite right, we can quickly spike on multiple tools and sort of get to that point of, okay, it is working or it's not, and then sort of make that larger financial and contracting decision and bring in the right tool and feel better about that. But it exposes those failures in a really, really fast way. So if you've heard of the concept of a digital twin, it's kind of similar to that. So a very, very cool thing that we're working on there in terms of supporting our business partners as they continue to have this insatiable appetite for new tools and technologies. And in terms of how we're working with our product teams, that same team inside Atlassian has a second offering called our mock RFP. So we're big fans of our own tools, shocker. So oftentimes we'll do our best to employ those tools where the use cases make sense. And one of the services that team offers is actually providing a very discrete output to our product teams to say, hey, we're looking at using, say, Jira Service Management for this use case. We're going to actually stack that up against our competitors and pretend like we're running an RFP against it. Sometimes the outcome is pretty positive, right? You say, okay, cool, our tool is absolutely going to work for that. Other times it is not. But when it's not, we've got that product feedback loop to sort of share all those results with our product leadership, our product teams, so they can start to close those gaps and make our products even more competitive in the market.
Yeah. Yeah, we had to share. It started with the premise, this company-on-company program, it started with the premise of, if we weren't Atlassian IT, would we still choose Atlassian products? And we developed a number of tools. We wanted to look at a tool just agnostically, like we would look at any other vendor when we were making an assessment. And we have a couple of tools and ways we do that. The mock RFP is one of those. We use our RFP, our request for a proposal framework that we use for other vendors. We use that against our own tools. Sometimes we look at our tools and we decide we wouldn't actually use them. And then you have to go in front of the executive team and explain that. You don't sleep the night before, but it's actually great data, right? We're operating under the premise that if it doesn't work for an enterprise IT like us, it's probably not working for enterprise IT like you all. And we want to make sure that our products allow everyone to have an IT team that runs awesome. And so we're making sure that we do that with our own products, sometimes in use cases that the product wasn't built for.
Right.
And getting that feedback, and then getting that feedback back to the product teams in a structured way that they understand, which is another thing that really helps the product, our product operating model allows us to have the same language as the product teams. So when we're working with them, we're talking to them and using the tools and techniques that they use to build products for the company that we're using to build inside corporate Atlassian, but we can get our requirements back into them quickly. So it's been a great opportunity for us to innovate in IT, and Atlassians are passionate about their products and they want us to be able to expand, and so we can take those use cases to our teams across the company as well. Okay, awesome. I just noticed the time, and we want to leave some time for questions, right?
Yeah.
I think we hit all of ours. All right, if anybody has any questions for anybody here, mostly these guys, I'm happy to have them answer you. Okay, we have one here, yeah. We're getting a mic to you.
Thank you. I just have a question about product managers. Could a single product manager in your guys' environment manage multiple products, or are they just assigned to a single product that they're managing?
So I think the question you're asking is, is it one product manager to one product?
Exactly.
Or is it one product manager to multiple products?
Exactly.
It depends on the product. So we have some very complex platforms that we're running that's going to take layers of product managers. So we probably have a group product manager overseeing that, senior product managers that are overseeing a significant portion of that portfolio, and then product managers that might run a feature set. It's smaller, whereas other products might be a lot simpler. The portfolio might be simpler, and they can, especially if it's just SaaS and they're mostly navigating with companies, that they would have one product manager to one product.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep.
So in your product-based model, how do you handle those services or products that are purely service, such as IT support or hardware?
Yeah, it's a great question. In fact, this was a heated debate when we were going down this path in IT leadership. It's amazing the stuff you can spend hours talking about is what's a service versus a product. We even toyed with this really confusing concept of product as a service. Product as a service. That failed. Talk about failing fast. That one didn't go very far, thank God. So we did in the end decide that we do have a few what we call shared services. But in general, it's an exception to the rule. Our business operations team would be one example. Sonny's team does provide a service on how he manages things. They have a tool and portfolios to do that, but it is a service that's provided to everyone. But mostly we are products. Even in the IT support, that is a product, right? Like someone's looking, should we go from 14 service desks down to 1? Should we also build a single point of entry? How is the knowledge base tying into these? And we use Confluence for our knowledge base. So who's thinking of the experience of the knowledge base and working with the Confluence team on a roadmap where we might want to take advantage of new features that are coming or influence the product through our company-on-company program. It's really once you say your service is a product, you own a product, a service is waiting for someone to come and ask for something or give direction. A product is someone who's motivated to get more customers using their product. And so it really helps. We want to be more product-based than where we are, but we're not going to force fit everything if it doesn't make total sense.
Hi. I was one of those few people that raised their hand when you asked, do you loathe IT or love IT? I said I loathe it.
Oh, nice.
Or
nice.
shadow IT, that is. So two-part question. I raised my hand because the fact that shadow IT means there's not enough oversight or visibility from the IT side. So part one of my question is, are there any recommendations as IT evolves and more systems are decentralized and people start managing things on their own, is there any runbook that you guys are using that has helped you to ensure there is still that accountability and ownership with respect to security, data protection? There's so many other areas that centralized IT and security teams do a little bit better, in my opinion, today, at least in companies like Splunk. I'm from Splunk, by the way. So versus how others do it that have been successful with it. I hope the question's clear.
Yeah, so I think your question is, I mean, tools, there's proliferation of tools. So how are we making sure that the tools, that we do have visibility into those tools? Are we using platforms? Are we using any detection? And how are we managing those?
Yeah, more on the governance side as well, basically. So if you don't run those systems at the same level of scrutiny that IT would usually do, a matured IT organization would do, how do you ensure that decentralized teams can still manage their systems with enough oversight and governance? Is there a runbook, or has there been some good best practices that has worked for Atlassian in that area?
There has been some good, but I'll answer a few, and then I think these guys probably have an opinion on this too. Also, I will say that earlier today, my team had a whole topic on this called Peeling the Sas Onion that will be available as a recording if you want to hear more. They're the experts on it. Okay. There's a lot more into this topic, but it's a great question in that the tooling keeps coming up. How do we get visibility? How do we govern things? So we have a philosophy that if you need it, go buy it. But once you buy it, it doesn't mean we don't want visibility into it. And so when the purchases are made, we do have a very lightweight governance that looks at the purchase and makes sure we have some basic things in place. And then once it's in-house, we're mapping that application that we purchased to our capability model, and that's the product managers then can have visibility into everything that maps up to them. The tooling behind this and how we're trying to automate that so it's not a big onerous governance process with a lot of spreadsheets is something that we're maturing right now. And we have a number of tools in place to allow us to do this. But as you can imagine, I mean, 600 apps, all the data fields and all the information that can quickly get out of date. So our goal is to, using our own tools, eventually get this automated so that it goes from purchase to understanding that it aligns to this portfolio for the product manager. I will add anecdotally, again, back to the product operating model. My question as an IT leader, if I'm seeing some IT product manager's portfolio growing with apps that the business is purchasing, is why aren't you need to have a closer relationship with your business, that you identify the gaps before they identify the gaps and go buy something. Because that's the real problem that's going on there. The IT team isn't in front of the business problem and helping work and identify the value before the business just gets frustrated and goes off and buys their own thing anyway. That's the culture side of it. Did anyone have anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say there's not one solution or process that fixes this entire problem. It's an ecosystem of solutions and an ecosystem of processes that we employ. And as Jenna mentioned, we're still maturing our own practices around this.
Yeah, and one specific area where we're actually putting a little bit more accountability on our IT teams is through our solution architects. So I don't want you guys to think that just because IT doesn't own it, we don't care. The solution architects do have accountability over the entire portfolio of tools that align to that product, some of which that may not be actually owned by IT, because those products are still performing a function that that business needs. So the solution architect needs to be aware of that in terms of sort of stitching that broader context of, say, a marketing product or a sales IT product together to get that full picture.
And just, no, actually, let's take another question.
Okay.
I was going to just say, there's the build component too, right? So if they're going to build it versus buy it, like everyone's talking about buying it, but if you're going to build it, provide the standard automation or whatever tooling that they can use to create that technology and build the governance into the platform. So then when that build gets deployed, it's automatically registered in Compass. The security scanning happens on all of the libraries. You have a trust score, and everything gets automated, and it's been done in the background.
Real quick, part B question. With respect to innovation and keeping the lights on, oftentimes I've struggled with teams trying to do both and not able to focus enough time on innovation. I mean, I love the idea of, if you're spending 80-20, take 10% out of it and then focus on innovation and automation, great, sounds good. But in reality, just switching hats to be able to support different systems with the proliferation of the number of tools any IT company or any IT organization has to support these days, it just has become more and more harder with the same group of people trying to quickly be able to keep the lights on and also do innovation. Do you have any recommendations on whether there's going to be separate dedicated teams that would benefit from being able to innovate more quickly, or?
So we had the separate team, but there are so many different domains and specialties in IT now. So that team is very good at looking at, the bigger trends, and they look at things that are down the second or third horizon, like virtual reality and blockchain and potential use cases within Atlassian. But there's still a lot of innovation to be had in, say, HR tech and sales tech and finance technology. And because they're doing it day in, day out, they will be able to come up with better ways of working and better ideas for their particular domains. And that's why we need to encourage that decentralization of innovation.
Thank you.
I think we're going to get kicked out of the room if I don't stop taking questions. But here is a QR code if you want to take a picture of that to our microsite where we've been publishing content. It's a new microsite. I think it's just been up for a few months, but we're going to have more content coming out of there, as well as hopefully some links to some of the presentations that were here this week for IT. But thank you so much. Appreciate your time and great questions. Hope you have a great rest of your day.